Mr. Griffith, 5 minutes for questioning, sir.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Let me say so that everybody's clear, my Democratic colleague just said that, taking no action isn't working. He's right, and we're going to have to take action. And so we'll have to sort out what the best action that we can take. But I think both sides of the aisle are dedicated to figuring out how we fix this, and there's all kinds of different ways to do it and all kinds of issues. Dr. Feldman, in your oral testimony, I was very taken, with what you were saying, and you indicated you had a patient who had gotten a call to change their drug. I believe it was for rheumatoid arthritis. Was that correct? And I want to know who called them, not the individual's name, but was it the PBM? Was it the insurance company? Who called them and said, hey, let's switch you over to this new drug?
It was the PBM, and they received a notification in the mail.
So they received a notification in the mail from the PBM, and were you ever consulted about that?
No, in fact, the patient brought it to me and said, I've been asked to switch to this drug, a lower cost alternative, and it's not necessarily a lower list price. And this happens all the time when you have mid-year formulary changes. Patients just get dropped. They won't even pay for it anymore. So this at least was slightly less egregious than the complete exclusion of a drug from preferred formulary.
Well, you also indicated that this drug was not similar. It was not really an alternative for that patient. Can you explain that to me?
It really was. It treats rheumatoid arthritis, but it was not a therapeutic equivalent drug. There are different mechanisms of action in the immune system, and the drug that this patient finally ended up on affected T cells in a certain way. This one was a different drug entirely that did not affect the same part of the immune system, so it would be ridiculous for me to change it.
So let me try to break this down into more simple terms that I can understand, and hopefully the folks back home who will be watching this later or watching it now will be able to understand. So, antacids. I take Zantac because I have lots of food allergies, and a lot of times stomach upset is caused by my allergies. That being said, Tums doesn't do much for me as a result of that, and Zantac has an antihistamine in it. Are you saying that what they did was they took them off the Zantac that had something that could help them and moved them onto something like the Tums, which might be a very good product for some people but doesn't work for me? Is that what you're trying to say?
Scientifically, it's not the same, but conceptually, yes.
Conceptually, okay. At least I got the concept. Ms. Bass, all right. Shouldn't PBMs at least be trying to contact doctors when you're dealing with something? Look, my stomach upset's not a big deal, but somebody's got rheumatoid arthritis, that's a big deal. Shouldn't the PBMs be contacting the doctor to say, for this patient, does this switch make sense because we're trying to save some money? I mean, I don't mind anybody trying to save some money, but let's make sure it works for the patient.
So in those kinds of situations, there are definitely appeals rights for everybody in Medicare and every private sector plan. And PBMs absolutely work with doctors to figure out, in that instance, what the right thing is.
But most patients don't understand the appeals rights. They don't understand the appeals process. They just know they've gotten this. And what about the cases like Dr. Feldman said? In some cases, they don't even give you a choice. It's a matter of we're no longer paying for the drug that you've been on for the last 4 years or 5 years that's been effective for you, and we're switching you over to this drug, and you can pay for that other drug if you want to, but we're not paying for it. That really can be disruptive, wouldn't you agree?
Sounds terribly disruptive, I agree.
So what can we do about that?
Again, there are exceptions in Medicare Part D, and there are processes to go through, and in that instance, the patient would have to go through that with his or her physician.
So the physician and the patient are going to have a lawyer to help them figure out the process? Is that what you're saying?
And that's why we need the samples to continue the patient on the correct medication, because it can take 6 to 8 weeks to go through an appeals process.
Thank you. So that way you have more time to go through the appeals process. Well, that makes sense. Thank you, Dr. Feldman. How many different PBMs are members of your association?
Right now, there are about 15.
About 15. So across the country, we have about 15, or how many PBMs do we have? Some of them probably aren't members, I guess.
There are 66 full-service PBMs in the U.S., and there are more organizations that provide PBM services.
Does that seem like maybe we got a little monopoly going in the PBM industry?
3 PBMs control nearly 80% of the population.
Yeah, that's why I was asking the question. And I understand you can't answer that because you've got an association to represent, but the point is that when we hear testimony that the PBMs are asking our drug manufacturers to raise the list price, and then many of them get a percentage of the cost of the drug for handling it, it looks like to me we got the foxes in the hen house, and we're going to have to take some action. I yield back, Madam Chair.
Thank the gentleman, and he yields.